Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Adele O'Connell, and I'm delighted to welcome here to the webinar this afternoon, Paths to Employment with National Learning Network, which speaks basically to supporting individuals with disabilities into education and work. So thanks for taking the time to join with us today. We're pleased to have such a diverse audience, which we can see from the registrations today. We've got parents and family members, employers, educators, health professionals, community organisations, and prospective students, so you're all very welcome. At NLN, we see every day the transformative impact that education, training and employment has on people's lives. We believe that talent is everywhere, but the opportunity is not always accessible. And too often people with disabilities encounter barriers and prevent them from reaching their full potential because the right supports and opportunities are not there. So today's webinar is about changing that conversation. So overall, over the past 5 years, NLN has supported more than 1,000 people with disabilities into employment, which is great. And behind every one of those success stories is a person who gained confidence, developed new skills, achieved greater independence, and took an important step towards the future that they want for themselves. We know that work's more than just a paycheck. It can be truly life-changing. And that was the belief at the heart of our More Than a Job campaign we ran last year, where we basically asked how Ireland supports people with disabilities into meaningful employment and to encourage more inclusive workplaces across the country. So today we'll explore the practical pathways that help make those opportunities possible. We're delighted to have great speakers with us here today. We've got Lisa Haw, Area Manager with National Learning Network, who spent more than 25 years supporting students through vocational training, rehabilitation programmes and employment pathways. We've got Adrian Stewart, who's our Head of Employability with Rehab. He brings more than 30 years experience in the disability sector, working closely with hundreds of employers to create meaningful career opportunities for people with disabilities. Shannon Mulqueen is a former student and a photographer whose inspiring story will help kind of highlight the confidence, skills and opportunities that can emerge from people when they finally access the right kind of supports that they need. And finally, we're very pleased to welcome Sean Mullen, who's the founder and managing director of Third Space, a social enterprise cafe, who'll share his experiences of inclusive hiring and hiring particularly students from NLN and what value that brings to his business. So if you're a parent on here today seeking information, an employer looking to build a more inclusive workforce, or a professional supporting other people, or someone considering your own next step, I hope that today's discussion leaves you informed and encouraged about what is possible. Please, in a while, type any questions you have into the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen, and we'll get to them in the end as much as we can. We'll also be sending a small survey at the end. We hope that you would take a few minutes to fill it out, because in the end, it'll just inform the next one we do. So we really want to know what people want to hear about. People are talking a little bit there about having audio issues. It may be on your end, as ours seems to be working fine, but look, we'll work through that in a second. So look, thanks again for joining us. We'll go ahead and introduce our first speaker this morning, which is Lisa Haw, Area Regional Manager with NLN. So go ahead, Lisa.
Good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be here this afternoon. I hope that everybody can hear me. So I suppose today what I'm going to do is give you a brief overview of National Learning Network, and I suppose how we support students in their paths to employment. So I'm an area manager in Limerick and Clare. I look after the two centres in those counties. But I suppose today I'm going to give you a national overview of National Learning Network, and hopefully that you will see what services and centres are available in your county. Okay, so I suppose the first slide that I'm going to show you, it's a little bit busy, so I will just go through it piece by piece, just to give you, I suppose, a brief snapshot of National Learning Network. So I suppose we have 32 centres, so we're, I suppose, a national organisation, and within those 32 centres, there are a number of hubs in each county. So I suppose if you go onto our website, www.nln.ie, you can search that website by county and find the county that you're living in, and it will bring up whatever centres and programmes are available in that county. So I suppose it's just to take the time to have a look at the website and to see what's available. I suppose within our centres, we are, I suppose, based in both city and rural areas. So I suppose we try to make our centres as accessible as possible to everybody. And that's why we've set up hubs as well in smaller towns or in rural areas, so that I suppose everybody has an NLN centre close enough to them. I suppose in terms of the types of I suppose students we support and maybe their support needs. So we would have students with an autism diagnosis, with an intellectual disability. They may have a physical and sensory disability, a mental health condition, neurological conditions, specific learning difficulties, or long-term health conditions. So we have quite a wide spectrum of support needs and the type of supports that we provide. I suppose we're funded for our programmes by the HSE, by the 16 ETBs across the country, and by the Higher Education Institute. And I suppose what that means really is that we don't charge a fee for our courses. All our courses are free. And I suppose in that way it makes it accessible to as many people as possible. I suppose in terms of the contents of our programme, so I suppose we offer mainstream qualifications, but in a supported environment. So any of our, I suppose, accredited programmes are mainstream accreditation. So whether that be QQI, whether it be City and Guilds, ICDL or CompTIA, they're some of the main accreditation partners that we have. So those mainstream qualifications you will see available in your local ETB, in your colleges of further education. They're exactly the same as those, but I suppose in our centres, our, I suppose, programmes are delivered in smaller groups. We provide, I suppose, a longer amount of time to achieve the qualifications, and we have additional supports. So I suppose, again, increasing accessibility to more students who may find a mainstream environment challenging or difficult. I suppose in terms of the levels of awards, so in QQI, which is the old FETAC that some of you may be familiar with, we offer levels 1 to 6. So I suppose there is a level for everybody. And I suppose once we get to know somebody and we can identify maybe what level is suitable for them, we look at, I suppose, what they have done to date in terms of looking at their prior learning to see what level might be suitable for the person. I suppose everybody that comes into an NLN centre, we're looking at what's the outcome. So each student will identify maybe what their outcome is. So whether that be further education and training, whether it might be increased independence, or whether it might be employment. I suppose we work with the student to identify that. And over 90% of our students who complete their training programme achieve that positive outcome, whether that be further or higher education or a job. And I suppose every year we're supporting more than 1,500 students, so across all of our centres. So I suppose we have a lot of experience in dealing with a lot of students with a varying degree of support needs and who have very positive outcomes in terms of further education and employment outcomes. So I suppose just I suppose in terms of the model that we use, there is an individual planning process for each student. So although there may be a number of students following the same programme, they may have separate goals. They may have different ways of getting to it, and some may take more time or less time. So it isn't this, that everything fits the same way for every person. It's certainly individualized. And I suppose the idea really is that we have specialist supported education and training, which is funded, as I said, by the HSE and the Education and Training Boards, and that there is a pathway for each student when they come into us. So if a student completes a programme within NLN, then there is a pathway to further education, to further qualifications or to employment. So that's really important that people know when they come in that they have a pathway and that it is defined. So I suppose I know obviously my Limerick and Clare centre is the best, so that's what I'm going to talk about. But obviously, I suppose the programmes that are available in Limerick and Clare, there will be a version of those programmes in every centre across the country. So as I said, really easy to find that out from our website to see what programmes are available. So in Limerick and Clare, we have a number of programmes. Some of them funded by the HSE, and particularly those for school leavers. So our foundation skills program would be particularly for school leavers to develop those independent skills, those daily living skills, and to do some vocational exploration. We have specific programs then for people who have completed our foundation skills in the Evolve program, which again is building on the skills that they have already developed and looking towards integration in the community, part-time work, further education and training while still having the support of a service on an ongoing basis. Our focus program then is specifically for people with mental health difficulties. So that's a year-long program and really around that vocational exploration, looking at what might be next and how they can, I suppose, maintain their wellness and their progress after perhaps being unwell. On the vocational training side, then we have a Career Start program, which again is for school leavers and it's more around that vocational exploration. That would have a mandatory work experience aspect where you would have at least, I suppose, 2 days out on work experience and also completing certified modules. We have retail with digital skills, which obviously preparing people for the retail environment. We have a catering program and we benefit greatly from that because we get to eat everything that they make, which is brilliant. And we have 12 students on that at the moment, all working towards their catering assistant qualification. Our employer-based training is particularly for people who want to look at the world of work. We have a number of host company partnerships whereby students would work 3 days a week in the host company and they would come into the centre 2 days a week. And that's across a variety of industries, whether it would be manufacturing, retail, catering, hotel. So I suppose it's really the person comes in with maybe an idea of where they want to work and what they want to do, and we try and find them a placement around that and provide support around that. Our PC maintenance and IT systems and IT in office, as you might have guessed, all about computers, about desktop applications, taking apart computers, putting them back together, 3D printers, all the high-tech AI stuff, project management, it's all included in that. So obviously if someone comes into us really interested in that side of things, then obviously that's the program for them. As I said, we have certification partners, they're listed there. So really important that not only are we, delivering those vocational skills, but we're, I suppose, accrediting those skills with accreditation partners that are really, highly regarded by employers and really good to have on CVs. So there are programs. I suppose in terms of the supports that we provide then, so I suppose the keystone of our team is the instructor, and they also act as a key worker with each of the students. So working individually with the student in terms of developing their plan, their goals, and supporting them to achieve that. We have specialist support, so we have psychological support services, which is made up of our psychologist and also our rehabilitation officer, and they provide sort of that personal development, social skills, support around things like anxiety, boundary management, interpersonal skills, all of those areas. Then I suppose we have targeted supports around literacy and numeracy for those people that would benefit from supports around that. And also we also look at our inclusive environment. So I suppose looking at the built environment to make sure that it's accessible for everybody. Many students will come in with sensory needs. So obviously we have supports around that in terms of sensory rooms, in terms of cubbies, quiet spaces where I suppose students can take a break from, the day-to-day activity and take a break during the day. And that's really beneficial for many of our students. And I suppose finally then the meaningful outcomes is obviously that the student achieves what they want to achieve. So whether that be further education, whether it be a job, or whether it be independent skills, I think that's really important as well. So something as simple as being, confident around taking the bus. That's certainly something that a lot of the students, they work towards having maybe come from school whereby they may have not had that opportunity. And certainly we provide support around that. So I suppose just in terms of how we work with students around that path to employment. So obviously, I suppose we're delivering that vocational element, which is the modules, which is the certified training, but we also have to provide support around, there's no point just having the actual certified skills, you also need to have all of the other skills, all of the soft skills in order to, I suppose, gain employment and to keep it. So I suppose first of all, it's about looking at informed career decision making. So helping the student to identify what's the right career for them, to reduce confusion and poor choices. And, you know, many of us, if you look back to when we were 18, 19 or whatever, did we really know what we wanted to do? People need support to identify what's right for them. So part of that then is, you know, becoming self-aware, understanding what are your strengths, what are your interests, what are your values, you know, where do you want to work, what do you want to achieve, and identifying the skills and abilities around that. The next stage is just around the career planning and goal setting. So again, someone may come to us and say, look, I really want to work in retail, for example. What do you need to do in order to be able to get that job? You know, we break it down into smaller achievable goals, and we review those every 4 months then to make sure that the student is on track and if they need any support around achieving those goals. The employability then is obviously developing the work-related skills, preparing, you know, for the job search, your CV, your interview skills. So we do a lot of work around mock interviews. We video a lot of interviews and then we can play them back and give feedback and all of that. You know, I suppose students get a lot of opportunity to present, you know, even just to their peers, because they're, you know, so that they're building confidence all of the time around their own abilities and their strengths. Then awareness of opportunities. So again, I suppose we have our finger on the pulse in terms of job opportunities, in terms of sectors, I suppose, that are growth sectors in our area, so that I suppose we can see where the jobs are coming up. I suppose it's to look at the market trends and all of that, and to prepare students for those jobs that are available. And then the final one that I've touched on is around confidence and motivation, so that a student, hopefully by the time that they finish one of our programs, that they will have the confidence to believe in their own abilities. And that comes through, I suppose, this positive, you know, I suppose, training environment that we have. And also, I suppose, that they will have completed work experience, they will have received feedback, you know, additional supports will be put in if required, so that they're coming at the end of our courses, which are anything from 18 months, 2 years, and some of the HSE funded programs are a little bit longer, that they've had a really positive experience and they've built on their confidence and their skills. So I just thought it would be good just to give you a case study, because it's, you know, it's all very well to be talking about those, but I suppose to look at a live example of someone who has worked their way through our programs. So I suppose Amy, she completed her Leaving Cert. She has a diagnosis of autism, and she had some difficulty, as she would say, with daily living skills required for independence. So when she finished school, she didn't want to go to college, and she also thought she lacked the soft skills required to get a job. So obviously she accessed a National Learning Network, and I suppose she identified that she would like to, you know, work on her day-to-day independent skills, and that was all put into her person-centered plan. She loved basketball, so she wanted to keep playing that, and she also wanted to, I suppose, have an individual skills development plan that suited her needs. So she also found, I suppose, verbal and non-verbal communication challenging. So with the support of her instructor and peer group, she worked hard to develop her communication and listening skills, and also all the while obviously building her IT skills, particularly around Microsoft Excel, because she had identified that she would really like a job in administration, utilising those skills. So I suppose, in terms of the supports then we provided, I suppose Amy worked with the team to develop her ability to stay on task. So again, sometimes she found that she might get distracted in the middle of a task or whatever. So we worked with Amy to, I suppose, to help her to develop those skills. She also was able to work through the course at her own pace. So again, I suppose everybody has their own individual goals, and I suppose they're supported to achieve those goals in a certain time frame. She developed decision-making skills and learned how to interact constructively with people from a position of self-awareness and social sensitivity. And she also worked around developing her personal effectiveness skills, and working independently, learning how to ask questions appropriately, all really important work-related skills when going into the work environment. We were delighted that Amy completed her Career Start programme, which is the vocational exploration programme. She achieved her level 3 major award in employability skills, and also her component QQI IT module. So like the Excel module we were talking about, she completed those at level 4. And while on the Career Start programme, she had started a work experience. And to me, a work experience is all really to get it. So she successfully got the paid part-time job. She continues obviously to play her basketball on a weekly basis and has recently represented her province in the Special Olympics basketball competition. So that's just, I suppose, a brief sort of a snapshot of a journey of one student, starting from, I suppose, finishing school, joining us in NLN, completing her certification, working on developing her interpersonal skills, and then securing employment, and still, I suppose, keeping those social interactions as well, which is really important. I suppose the health-related activities such as the basketball, having the peer interaction and all of that, which is really important for everybody. So I suppose I'm nearly finished. I'm sure you're glad to hear that just some student testimonials. So I suppose these are some of our students in Limerick and Clare that have successfully worked through their programs in NLN. So Ruth, she started with us straight after school into our foundation skills program. She completed that successfully and also moved on to our Career Start program. And as part of that, she had a work experience in Elvery's Intersport, and from there that turned into a job. So she now has a part-time job in Elvery's, and I suppose very happy with the progress that she has made, and to see her, I suppose, going from a nervous, I suppose, 18-year-old coming into us, and for her to progress now, and you can see how confident she is there in her sports gear, and working very successfully in Elvery's. Joe Malloy, another NLN student who completed our IT and Office programme. Joe would have been, I suppose, at home for a number of years because of ill health, and he joined us on the IT and Office skills, and I suppose his confidence really grew, and also I suppose he also upskilled in terms of his IT and Office skills, and that gave him the confidence as well to apply for jobs in that area, having been at home for a period of time. And then finally, I suppose Siobhan and Sive, they both completed our Career Start programme, moved on to employer-based training, and they had their placement in the Armada Hotel in Spanish Point in the accommodation, in the housekeeping team, and both of them secured employment as well following that programme. So I suppose they're just people that would have come to our centres and have been successful in achieving employment through, I suppose, the programmes and through all of their efforts. And I suppose we can only provide the support. The students provide all of the work, the hard work, and the engagement and the motivation, and hopefully we provide the environment to help them to succeed. So finally then, I just wanted to, I suppose, finish with just some partners, and again, these are based in Limerick and Clare, so I suppose our education partners, where some of our students will move on to further education or third level. So we're very lucky in Limerick and Clare to have access to Mary I, the University of Limerick, TUS, which is formerly LIT, and the Central College and the Further Education and Training, the colleges there. And then just some of our employment partnerships. So again, some of these are national. We have a national partnership with Mr. Price. They have been superb in terms of supporting our students. And even just this morning, I did a person-centred planning meeting with one of our students who has just secured 20 hours a week of part-time employment with Mr. Price. And I suppose having talked to him and his family this morning, how positive they were about the support that employers, particularly Mr. Price, I suppose in this instance, how supportive they have been to that student, and how accommodating they have been. And I suppose in return then how loyal and efficient and hardworking that student has been for them. So it's a win-win situation, I suppose, between both the employer and the student when we get the right match. So certainly this morning was a real good news day, and we celebrate all of those in NLN. Every job that we get, every time a student moves on to further education, or gets the bus from the city out here to the centre, every one of those achievements are celebrated. So yeah, I suppose it's just that we try and provide as many supports as we can, but the student has to be with us as well, and between us, I think that we can succeed. So look, hopefully that has given you a really fast whistle-stop tour of NLN, and will give you an idea of what we provide. But I would encourage everybody to contact your local NLN centre, if it is yourself or someone that you know that you think would benefit from the programmes and the supports. We would be delighted to talk to you. So thanks very much for listening, and I hope that you found it helpful.
Thanks very much, Lisa. That was really comprehensive, and it's great to see all the employers there, and also obviously the case studies of real life people and how they've, what advantages they've had. And also, just to say again, we have an LNN or more than one in every county in Ireland for anyone who's on today. So could contact them at any one of them on lnn.ie. You'll find all the centres there. So I think just from the employment perspective, moving on quickly to Adrian Stewart, who's our head of employability, who has decades of experience of working with employers in this way. So he's going to kind of talk us through maybe some of the barriers to employment and also how we specifically work with employers. So Adrian, you're very welcome if you unmute there.
Thanks, Edel. Thanks for that. Yeah, I just wanted to talk briefly this afternoon about employment and employability for people with disabilities. And I suppose it's important to put this in context. Ireland has a very, very poor record of the employment of people with disabilities. Just to give you sort of some figures on that, the employment rate in Ireland is around about 32%, whereas in the rest of Europe, it's averaging 51%. And coupled with that, it's quite often measured that we look at the disability employment gap. That's the employment rate for people with disabilities versus the people without disabilities. And again, that's twice of what it is across the EU. So there is a lot of work to be done in this area. And as Lisa said in her presentation, the likes of Mr. Price and those are very much leading the way. I think it's important, Edel mentioned there about more than a job, and I think that we quite often think that more than a job is around the person with the disability itself, but I think it stretches beyond that. I think it's more than a job. Also benefits the employer and also benefits the economy, and I would dwell on that a bit today as well. I just think this caption is very good in terms of not necessarily the definitions, but it's around about supports and accommodations that people with disabilities need in employment. So you can see on the first caption there, if we treat everybody equally, then there's going to be people left out and left behind. And if we give people the supports, they're going to be able to participate, and they're going to be able to, in this caption, to see what's happening. And I think that's very much where we're at in Ireland, sort of moving from that equality to equity slide. But I think what we ultimately need to be looking at, and again, Lisa had mentioned this, the whole area of being inclusive, so that we're breaking down barriers for everybody, so that everybody has a chance to be included and to participate. I mentioned there about the benefits, and again, referring back to more than a job. So I think for the benefits for a person with a disability, there's obviously the financial independence that a job brings, that sense of self-esteem, that sense of self-worth. but also opportunities to develop further skills. So when people finish their training in National Learning Network, as we all know, learning is lifelong now, and people need to develop their skills and build their careers while in a job. Social connections is an area where people with disabilities can quite often be left out, and a job builds that social network, and it's quite often a really important part of a job for a person. And improved health and well-being, and again, there's studies that would show that a job improves people's health and overall well-being. I think for employers, it obviously, and we've been going through a number of years now where the labour market is quite competitive. So this expands that labour market and expands people's access into the labour market. People with disabilities, quite often, they have many challenges that they have to overcome. So their problem solving creativity has to be good, and quite often, and the feedback we get back from employers is that they bring a lot of those skills to the workplace. They're more creative and very much into problem solving. And I think that for customers of businesses, they're understanding, and Mr. Price would say that a lot of their customers would have a better understanding of the requirements around people with disabilities. And then finally, it sort of strengthens the reputation and of that employer in that locality. And I think that we maintain within the rehab that employment is not just the right thing to do, but it makes smart business sense. And that's a sort of a key ingredient of what we look at. For the economy, there's obviously, we know that there's increased labour force participation. There's increased income from taxation, and there's less expenditure on social welfare. We can boost productivity by utilising the skills and talents that might otherwise remain dormant, and it supports a sustainable economic growth and a more inclusive labour market. So I think there's, Lisa mentioned about a win-win. I think there's a sort of a win-win-win here for all three of those. So how can NLN help? And I think, again, Lisa had covered this quite in a way, but our findings is that employers actually will need support and want support, and once they're supported, they'll move in and become more confident themselves in employing people with disabilities. But as I said, a lot of them don't know where to begin this journey, and I think they can begin by sort of having close contacts with their local National Learning Network Centre that can provide that level of support around inclusive recruitment, advice on workplace accommodations. We provide online disability awareness training for any employers that we work with. And we also provide practical guidance in terms of there's no one size fits all for people with disabilities, so every step has to be tailored to the person with the disability and to the job that they're doing. So that's it. Just to sort of say that we looked at the employers in Limerick. Nationally, we have about 750 employers that we work with. Many of those are small, and many of them work very, very closely with other centres throughout the country to support people. So just to say that we have that network. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. And if an employer is on here today and would like to get in touch, who would they get in touch with, Adrian?
They can get in touch with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. That's brilliant. Thanks for the employer piece. And now to the heart of why we do what we do is one of our former students, Shannon Mulqueen, who owns Blue Raven Photography down in West Cork. So Shannon's going to just talk us through her experience and how NLN helped her. So go ahead, Shannon.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. So I'm Shannon, and I'm the owner of Blue Raven Photography, which specialises in equine and canine photography based down in Rosscarbery, County Cork. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me here today and giving me a chance to share my experience, which is a highly, highly positive experience. So building my business has honestly been an incredible journey, but it's also been a journey of personal growth and confidence. And I can genuinely say that NLN Bantry has played a huge role in helping me get where I am today. When I first started with NLN, I already had a huge passion for animals and photography, anything creativity. That was my thing, and I always knew it was. But unfortunately, I didn't have the confidence or really the abilities to know exactly where to go. Like, how do I start this stuff? I'd always known that I wanted to own my own business, but I was never in, like I said, I had no confidence in myself to turn around and be like, you can do it. Whereas when I started here, it was great to continually hear, you can do this, you've got this. And to be fair, like, honestly, I wouldn't be where I am today. It's amazing the amount of growth in the 2 years, because I did the level 4 employer-based training program, and like the amount between the work experience, the just even the modules, everything alone, it's just really brought me up to be who I am. And trust me, 2 years ago, I certainly wouldn't be sitting here talking on a webinar. I wouldn't even answer a phone. So like the personal skills I've gotten from it is just remarkable, absolutely remarkable. So what made the biggest difference for me wasn't just the modules or the practical skills, it was actually the support and the encouragement from the instructors and the staff. So from the very beginning, they created an environment where I felt supported, understood, and encouraged to believe in myself. There were times when I doubted myself or felt unsure. There were plenty of them, absolutely plenty of them, but straight away I'd go into the office, I'd tell my worries, and they were there 110%. They sat there. You know, it could be over grievances, it could be anything. I spent a lot of time crying in the offices. I'll tell you that. But it was nice that I had somewhere that I could sit and talk to someone and just feel at home. Like, it's not really, I wouldn't really call it a center. I would call it like it's a family. You know, you go in there and it's remarkable. That's all I can really say, you know. So of course, I also gained practical skills through it as well. Like, there's modules like personal development, customer service, IT training, which really helped me become a lot more confident in my business. And then, yeah, so today, Blue Raven Photography is still continuing to grow, and I'm genuinely proud of how far it's come, honestly. And like, if it wasn't for NLN, I don't know where I would be today. You know, I never thought that I'd sit here and, you know, be running my own business. I never thought I'd see the day, but now I stand up and I'm proud of it, you know. But I'm incredibly grateful for this experience, and I hope, to be honest, my story encourages anyone who is doubting themselves right now that sometimes having the right people believe in you can completely change your direction in life, because it certainly did mine. So thank you very much for listening, and hopefully we'll see you.
Thanks, Shannon. That was fantastic. And as I said, nothing tells our story but from the people themselves who've actually been through our services. And it's fantastic to see how transformative it is. Thanks a million. I'm sure there'll be some questions for you there in a while. So finally there, quickly, we'll move on to Sean Milan, who's the founder and managing director of Third Space Social Enterprise Cafe, who's been actually employing graduates of ours for a long time. So he'll just tell you there in his own words. Sean, if you're ready.
Yeah, thanks, Adele. Lovely to be with you. Shannon, what a great story. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. Third Space is a cafe and catering business based in Smithfield in the centre of Dublin that employs 25 people, some full-time, some part-time. We opened in 2012 And we started developing a relationship with National Learning Network, our regional office in Phibsborough, which is about a mile away from us, in 2013. And it began with people coming in for work experience, either in the kitchen or in the cafe in the front of house or in our office as well. We had a small office. And we soon got to know and to really appreciate the folk that were coming to us from National Learning Network, and realised that there was potential here for employment, long-term employment for folk. So one of the first folk who came into us, she came into work in the office just for a bit of work experience. And day one, when she was in there, somebody didn't turn up for their lunchtime shift. So Ciara was asked if she would put on an apron and go outside and help clear tables. And we all noticed the interaction and the laughter that there was in the room when Ciara was working on the tables. So it ended up being that she moved from working in the office to working in the cafe. And some 12 plus years later, she's still working with us now part-time. She's a mom, but she still comes in every week, and she is one of many who has stayed with us long term. We experienced a lot of support from National Learning Network, especially when we were learning how to train and develop people. That was really important for us. We worked with a number of other agencies as well, but I have to say that National Learning Network stood out head and shoulders above the others, not least because they listened seriously when we talked about the needs of the business from our point of view, and that we couldn't afford to have people just not showing up for shifts or things like that, that those kind of things were really important. And right from the beginning, the NLN folk were understanding of that, really worked with us very well, and that developed the relationship long term. So there's some great stories of folk who have come to us from NLN. One of the early, we've had folk from teenage years right through to someone in their late 50s has come to work with us and is still working with us, actually. And one of the early teenagers who came in was with us for a number of years and ended up being our head chef, running our kitchen for us. Another lad came in to work in the office, and he then, we offered him further work, and he ended up then getting an accounting qualification and became our accounts manager, and was with us for over 10 years and then left to start his own business. So there's a lot of stories like that, and that the business has benefited from that. We're a community cafe, so we have lots of people coming in regularly, and it's really important that they know the staff and the staff know them. So Robbie, for example, who's one of our baristas, he came to us in 2014 from National Learning Network, and the fact that he's still there, still working with us, knows the names of the customers who are coming in every day. There's a great banter that goes on there. So the business has benefited greatly from people like Robbie staying with us long term. There's great loyalty there. We've got a whole lot of newer folk that have come in since then, particularly since COVID. So one of our NLN folk who came in on NLN is now our cafe manager. She's been running the front of house business for the last 4 years. Another person who came into us, she came in to work in the office. Sarah, she then became interested in HR. She learned a bit more about human resources from the work that we were doing, and eventually went off and studied, got a human resources qualification as well, and now works for us part-time, but on a permanent basis. So we have benefited in so many ways from our relationships with these folk. We continue to take in students, work experience folk. We learn from them, they learn from us. Our customers participate in the training process as well. They've been around long enough to know, okay, this person might need a bit of support here. They will speak a word of encouragement and so on. And I just give you one example to finish with. Robbie, who I mentioned already, he's our barista and he serves the tables at times as well. And I was walking in one morning and there was a woman sitting outside in a business suit. I'd say she's probably a lawyer, and Robbie had brought out her coffee and she asked him for something. And I didn't hear what she said to him, but I heard him reply to her by saying, "Oh, yeah, no problem. We've always got your back in here." And I turned and looked at the woman and she had this smile on her face. And I thought, he's just made her day now by doing that. And nobody trained him to say that, but he's so much a part of the ethos and part of who we are that he just does things like that, and people love him for that. So we have great time for NLN. We're very thankful for the relationship. We're very thankful for the team in Phibsborough. They've been very supportive to us, and I would highly recommend, if you're an employer listening in, take a chance, try it out, go to meet the folk in wherever your centre is. You will not regret it. It will be well worth your while. Your business will benefit from it. Your customers will benefit from it. And the people that you bring in and your existing staff will benefit from it as well. Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Sean. That's fantastic. And it's really great to hear, particularly the progression piece, that people progressing on to different roles and stuff, which is really fantastic. So thanks so much for the time today. We have loads of questions coming in, so we'll get to a few. And just to say that there are people with kind of very specific questions around their sons and daughters and stuff that we will get back to you directly through email, because it actually, it's better to spend a bit more time on the responses there. So there's just one for Lisa there straight off the mark saying, how do students get referred to you, Lisa?
Yeah, sure. So I suppose the easiest way to do it is to contact the centre directly. And I suppose then we can advise you as to what steps need to be taken, because it does depend on the programme that you might be interested in and whether it's funded by the HSE or ETB. So I suppose there's a step-by-step process, but we will support you through that process. So your first protocol is just pick up the phone, contact us. We will normally arrange to meet with you, and if it's your son or daughter or whatever, we'll go through the programmes that are available in the centre and we'll walk you through the process.
Great. And somebody else said, is it exclusively for people with disabilities?
I suppose our criteria is that you have to have an identified support need. So part of our process would require a health report that would be completed by the person's GP, just identifying what that support need may be. So that is the criteria for our funding. So somebody does need to have an additional support need.
Great. Maybe this is for Adrian or Lisa, just any tips on how you build partnerships with employers for work experience or part-time jobs?
Adrian, do you want to take it?
I can come in on that. I think based on our experience, it's about working with the local employer and the local centre, as Sean has already alluded to. So it's about that connection with somebody. Certainly we can do the sort of the preparatory work, but once you get working around an individual and supporting their needs and supporting the employer needs, it's building that relationship from there.
Great. So we've lots more here now. There's a few people asking around people who have a visual impairment or visual disability, kind of can we help with the ISL interpreters and things like that? Lisa, have you any words on that?
Yeah, so I suppose for people who are deaf, we have a communication support specialist in the centre here, so they support with the ISL. For those that are visually impaired, we normally link in with NCBI around an assessment. So if there's additional assistive technology required, that we can source that as well and support the person to access our programmes that way.
Okay, perfect. Somebody else was saying it might be a bit specific, but if a young person who accesses third level through DARE, it's DARE, but have to leave the course owing to ill health, could they still access LNN programmes?
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose our programmes don't require CAO points, so it is just a referral. So in that case, if a person was coming on to one of our vocational training programmes, they would be referred through the ETB. So again, I suppose make contact with the NLN centre first, and we will walk you through the process of referral.
Are there any specific referral pathways for young people who are neurodivergent and have mental health challenges in the Louth area? Now, I know you're not specifically the Louth area, but I suppose it's the same answer, isn't it, to contact the centre?
It is, yeah. So I suppose if you go onto the website, you'll be able to search the website by county. It will bring up the centre in Louth or whatever, and just to use the contact details there to contact them.
Great. Is there a gap in supports for young people aged 16 with moderate learning difficulties who require significant support with a focus on independent living skills? Someone from the Kerry area has asked that.
Yes, I would agree with that. I suppose in terms of HSE funded programs, which is probably what that person would require if they have a moderate intellectual disability, the HSE referral process doesn't start until the person is 18. So if the person isn't currently attending school, then the options are limited in terms of that 16 to 18. We do take students from 16 onwards on our vocational training programs, but I suppose it depends on the person's support needs. So we would certainly identify that as a gap, in terms of that 16 to 18 year age group, especially for those that might have higher support needs. So certainly that's something that we are advocating with the funders around that cohort of students.
Okay, we'll just do a couple more because I know we're pushing on, but does a young person with a disability have to be in receipt of social welfare payment to access NLN?
No, they don't. So I suppose depending on the program, they can continue. If they're on a disability allowance, they can continue to receive the disability allowance. If they're on a HSE funded program, if they're going on to one of our vocational training programs, the disability allowance will be paused and they will get the equivalent in a training allowance. So again, I suppose payments are very individual to the person, and obviously we'd be able to walk a person through that depending on what payment they have currently and what they would be entitled to then if they came on one of our programs.
Okay, brilliant. And just to say that there are just lots and lots and lots of comments for Shannon and for Sean talking about how fantastic Shannon's experience is and saying well done to Sean, just so you're aware of that. There are less questions, but just kind of comments on that. So I think it's good to point that out. Unless, Ciara, are you online? Am I missing any of the, I think I've got most of the questions there.
Yeah, I think you do.
Yeah, there's one, do you provide support for second level students with disability who are seeking to work experience in TY and LCA? Lisa?
Yes, I suppose what we normally do is as part of our, I suppose, intake procedure, we would offer students who I suppose are exploring us as an option for the future. We offer what's called a skill sample. So the student would come in for perhaps a week to sample our programs, and I suppose it can be seen as a work experience, but I suppose really they're trying out the programs to see whether they think they might be suitable for them in the future.
Great. And look, I'll ask a last one there. Are there any specific psychological assessments required prior to acceptance?
No, I suppose, again, dependent on the student. For some, the health report may be sufficient. So that's really just the GP, I suppose, verifying that there is an additional support need. If, I suppose, there are higher supports in relation to a student, then a psychological assessment, if it has already been done, is very helpful in terms of maybe providing us with additional information or strategies that might help us to support the student, but it's not a requirement for entry to any of our programs.
Okay, brilliant. So I think that's it. There's a couple of very specific questions, like I said there, from parents. We will get back to you individually so we can take some time with the response. There is our feedback survey there. It's a QR code or it's in the chat. We would really appreciate if you could take 5 minutes, because what we want is to provide the information that you want for our next one. So it's really asking about, is there any other information we're not covering? So just a huge thank you to all of our speakers today. Absolutely fantastic. And I think everyone found it really informative. And for everyone online for their attention and for staying on to the very end. We'll get back to you. There's a recording will be sent out and we'll respond to people's individual questions. Please email us as well at info@lnn.ie if you didn't get a chance to ask your question today or you didn't feel that your question was answered. We didn't have enough time. And thank you again to everyone. That's been fantastic.